Greetings and oratorical salutations to all of you who are watching another one of my speech videos. Dr. Steve Yano here again with more videos from my online public speaking class. And this video is going to be an introduction to thinking and talking about audience. Audience is the most important concept in public speaking or in oratory. That's who you're speaking for, who you're speaking to, or perhaps even who you're speaking with. The change of the preposition there is incredibly important. When I change the preposition, I don't just change the semantics of what I'm saying. I'm changing what I'm saying in a very direct way. I'm changing the relationship you have with your audience. But that's kind of near the end. Let's backtrack a little bit and talk about what audience is and how you speak to them. The way I see it, there are three views one can have of your audience for a speech. And when I say a speech, I mean something like a YouTube video, I say a podcast, a presentation you give in a boardroom, a presentation you do in a class or a workshop that you're doing, or any kind of presentation that you're doing either for community event or community organization. Audience is the thing that controls what you're going to say. They are the ones who are going to shape more than any other factor what it is that you're going to say and what it is that you're going to offer to the audience. You might think, well, what about facts? What about information? That's important too, but the information can't just be told to them. This is the opposite of the way politics are in the US right now, where people think if they just say the facts to somebody, that's going to open up their eyes. People approach every bit of information that they hear and see and think about with a lifetime of decisions and encounters and events that have shaped their thinking. And you can't expect that one fact that you just tell somebody without any kind of adjustment for that is going to get them to open their eyes, to change their mind, or to agree with you, whatever it is the goal of your speech is. As I said in the last video, the most important three goals of any speech are understanding, empathy, and agreement. And we rarely get to agreement in one fell swoop. Usually that's where people start, but we have to start with understanding. And that means accepting the fact that people don't come to you as blank slates. They come with a lifetime of experiences and decisions they made. Some of them are good, some of them bad. It doesn't matter. As an orator, as a rhetor, your obligation is to try to figure out as much of this as you can. The more that you know about this, the more you can shape information and facts to reach the audience. But most people today aren't interested in that. They're like, well, facts are facts. If you don't agree with me, you're just stupid or you're evil or wrong. And that's kind of where we have gotten in contemporary discussions of issues, especially political speeches. I don't think people even really listen to the speeches of people they disagree with because of that lack of finesse, or what I would call rhetoric. So if we take the question of audience very seriously, what do we come up with? Well, I think there are three approaches one can have. The first one is the simplest and kind of the default approach, which is the audience is a receptor for your words. That is, they're going to receive your words as if those words were a product that you made for them, something that you make, something that you transmit to them, something that you give them. You're like, here you go. I made this for you. They're the receptors of whatever message or research or claim that you're trying to make. This receptor model of audience thinks of speech as a particular product that needs to be delivered to a customer. It's a customer service model, so it makes a lot of sense. The idea that you are delivering goods that someone has paid you somehow to give you, or they're paying you with attention for the goods that you're giving them, is a very easy sell and a very easy thing to do. Unfortunately, the metaphor breaks down because speech is not a product. Speech isn't something that we give to people. Speech is participatory, ephemeral, and it involves the entire body. So thinking about it as a little gift you're giving somebody is kind of an insufficient metaphor. The problem with receptor model is this is the way that the cable news companies treat political speeches now. They treat all speeches as, well, here's the speech they gave. What's really in there? What's in the box? Almost every political analysis video you see on CNN, Fox, CNBC is basically an unboxing video. They treat the box like something they got from Amazon or something they got from somebody who wants to test out their product. And they're like, ooh, here's the unboxing. Here's the warranty card. Here are the instructions. Here's the power cable. That's the way they treat a speech by any politician. What's actually in the box? What have they delivered to us? And it gets us away from the speech as if the speech isn't meant to do anything except package a particular message, and then we're going to decide whether or not that message is good or bad. There's absolutely no discussion of how it makes us feel. There's no discussion of our involvement in it, anything like that. Speech as pro forma, speech as a ceremony, speech as a ritual is what receptor audience theory advocates. And I think although there are times when there's a speech that's pro forma or a speech that is ceremonial in nature, to think of all speeches as that is not very good. Plus, ceremonial speaking is incredibly dynamic. We're going to get to that in a later video, and might even be argumentative, some scholars say. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's just the first one. So most people, they think of a speech as a product they're making for an audience, and they deliver it. They're the UPS guy, and they're done. And speech analysis or thinking about a speech is an unboxing video. This is a very narrow view, and not a view that I think you should take in terms of putting your speeches together. Audience number 2 is the more traditional. Maybe that one is more corporate, the first one, the receptor theory. This one's quite traditional, which is the audience is deficient in some way. And I think of this as orators who think of the audience as bad students. They don't want to be there. They're not that interested. They're dumb. They're empty-headed. They don't know anything. And this leads to a kind of speaking where you talk down to your audience. And also, you're not only are you pedantic, you're very authoritarian with the audience. Like, you know better what they should do about this issue than they do. And I think this is an incredibly narrow way to approach things. Just like a bad professor or a bad teacher who goes in and says, these students don't know anything, I have to cover all this content. They don't even ask the student or the audience what it is they already know. They make no effort to poll or engage the audience and figure out where they are on an issue. The most important response to the student model, or the deficient student model of audience, was written by Ralph Ellison in the 1970s. It's called The Little Man Behind the Stove at Chehaw Station. And in this essay, Ralph Ellison warns us. He warns us very carefully not to think of American audiences as anything but incredibly complex people who have access to literatures and to culture that economically, through a purely economic analysis, they should not have access to. I encourage you to read that article by Ralph Ellison, The Little Man Behind the Stove. I think it was in the Swanee Review, 1972, but I don't know. That's just my guess. And then in post-production, I'll put the citation down here, and then we can see if I was right or not about my mind for citations. This will be an interesting challenge. I hope I was right. We'll see. Thinking about your audience as uninterested and stupid is often thought of as a way of saying, well, look, all the work has to be on the speaker. And I'm okay with saying all the work has to be on the speaker to make something work in terms of public speaking. But thinking of your audience as stupid, or even calling them stupid, or calling them uneducated or uninterested, makes you approach them in a way that they already are that way. The power of rhetoric, the power of oratory, is constitutive, not transmissive. What does that mean? That means that when I say something to an audience, in the tone, in the approach that audience is ignorant or stupid, I'm actually creating that reality for them. They see that that's what I'm calling them into being as. They can resist that, or they can act accordingly. This is really, really, really dangerous stuff. The words that we use are incredibly potent, incredibly dangerous. And I would say approach every audience as if they were a lot smarter than you. So the idea that the audience doesn't know and that you're providing knowledge, even if it's done from a spirit of kindness or goodwill, is always going to make the audience feel that you're a pedant, that you're insulting them, that you think they're unintelligent, and it's really kind of a poor way to approach the audience. Now, you might be saying, well, if you're a teacher, you got to approach the audience in a way to say, look, maybe they don't really know things. How do I approach them in a way that wouldn't be this? And I say, well, with respect. The idea that the audience has come into that room without bringing anything with them, is a surefire way to fail in your attempt to speak to that audience. Everyone carries around baskets and baskets, suitcases, full of decisions, life choices, interpretations, and meaningful experiences that you ignore at your peril. If you treat them like they've never had an encounter or don't know anything about what you're speaking about at all, you're ignorant, not them. Okay, so the final audience model is the one I like best, which is audience as cooperative co-author or audience as co-conspirator. What this means is that the audience helps you write the speech. You've done your research, you put your speech together, you have all the information you want. Now it's time to think about what the audience is thinking about your thoughts, your words, and your information, and what they're going to accept. Now, to get a little technical here in theory, Chaim Perlman and Lucy Ulbricht-Stidicka, who I've made videos about before on this channel, talk about this as the universal audience theory, which is what would an audience member reasonably accept? What's the thing that they would accept that would be the best kind of thinking or the best kind of reasoning on an issue? And that's a great guideline, I think, to take into account when you're putting a speech together and when you're thinking about the role audience plays in making it. Everything that audience brought into the room with them is good to go as far as something you can use to connect information, important facts, and things that you want them to agree with to their life experiences. This is what I mean when I say that facts and information don't set the speech. They're a part of the speech and they're in play, but you can't just confront an audience with truth and expect them to just be blown away by the light of what you're saying. You have to carefully embed what you want them to think and believe in the terms they're already familiar with. You can't just come in and start smashing up all the decisions they've made. You have to come in with respect and with understanding that all of those decisions they made and the judgments they made are legitimate. They're based on their life experiences, and most of our politics and ideas are based on our life experiences. How could we say that it's illegitimate to use what's happened to you in your life as a way of framing new information or a new speaker? The more information you can get, the better you can come to terms of understanding. Here is what I'm saying to you. Here is what I want you to think about. Here is what my purpose is here today. And that's the level of understanding. On the level of empathy, one must do a lot more investigation. One has to come and approach the audience and say, how does this make you feel? Or we've all had the experience where we feel X. Or maybe because of who they are geographically or where they are, they might have had universal experiences tied to geography or tied to cultural belief that are things that you might not think are valuable or legitimate, but you must make a connection to those in your presentation in order to get the maximum chance of connection with that audience. All good speeches are interactive and malleable. That is, you aren't committed to your speech. Your fidelity is not to your speech. Your fidelity is to human beings. That's the whole purpose of oratory in the first place. It's not to getting your speech that you've written right. You don't want to stumble over the manuscript and mispronounce a word and say, oh, excuse me. Who are you saying excuse me to? The text, the piece of paper? What about that audience? Who are they? They're your co-authors here. You're writing this together. You're presenting this together. You're co-conspirators. It's you guys as a little private affair against the rest of the world who doesn't know. They aren't aware. And we have a special kind of knowledge that only we have. And it's because of our legitimate life experiences that lead us to these conclusions. These are the kind of ways you can approach it to composing your speech. Think about the audience as friends. They're not people to correct. They're not people to tell what to do. They're people to make something together. Excellent speech, an excellent presentation is one where at the end of it, you're like, wow, interacting with that audience and responding to their body language and responding to them by keeping my speech malleable made something much, much better than I could have just written on my own at my keyboard or with my pen. That's really the sign of something excellent, I think. Final questions and questions you need to think about anytime you're putting a speech together are the following questions. First, what is it my audience brings with them to this speech? What are they carrying? What life experiences am I pretty sure they've all had? And what things are on their mind? What's concerning them? They're walking in to hear your speech from a busy workday, from family troubles at home. More importantly, and more easily accessible, is what's going on in the world that concerns them. What headlines are people talking about? What news items are people talking about? What really worries them about the world and the state of things? These are wonderful ways to connect with the audience. Bringing up current events and things that are happening that are on everybody's mind, whether or not they're actually important or not, is irrelevant. What matters is that people bring them into the room. They're fair game and great use for you to connect with the audience and then start working on the speech together. Question number 2. What do they assume about the issue that you're talking about? What are their assumptions? What's their history with it? And what are the things that they believe about it that, erroneous or not, they're going to make assumptions about? Whatever assumptions they have about that issue, you can use them. Whether they're good, bad, whatever. It's wonderful to bring that in and make them feel like they already know something about it. And then you can base it on their own understanding already and make a much deeper connection than you can by just starting at a place that will disinterest them because they've already made a judgment much, much further along than you have about the issue. Question number 3. What is it you want them to leave with? Now, ultimately, by the rubric I've set up in these videos, agreement is ultimately what we want them to leave with. We can't hope for agreement, or we can't start there unless we have understanding and empathy first. The two most important things are the things that you should spend over 90% of your time as an orator thinking about. Is how do I get them to understand the importance of what I'm talking about, and how do I get them to feel it? If those are the things you're focusing on, then what you want to leave people with is a feeling. Either a feeling that they know a little bit more, or that they're better prepared, or they're a little bit more comfortable with the topic. Or you can go the other way and instill a sense of panic or indignation or real sorrow that will motivate them to act politically down the road. They're maybe not going to do exactly what you want them to do, but they'll do something close, and they'll do something productive and good. You would hope, based on what it is that you've left them with in terms of a feeling. So I'm very Ciceronian in this regard. I think that leaving them with a feeling, a strong feeling, Cicero said the two most important were indignation and pity. But in our world, it could be a lot of different kinds of feelings people could have. What is it you want them to take with them will help you decide how to move your speech as you go through it, and putting it together with the audience in mind, and how you're going to draft that outline and get those talking points together. And finally, the last question is, what's competing for attention with you and attention for this issue? This is something that's always going to be rooted directly in the audience. There isn't any universal attention grabbing thing. There are certain things that I think can vie for attention from you, but you want to be aware of those things and then bring your enemies closer in. Don't tell them that they shouldn't be concerned about that, or that they shouldn't be paying attention to those things that concern them. That's insulting. These are things that are legitimate concerns because the audience has them, or things that have the audience's attention because they're important to the audience. As an orator, you can't be the judge of what's right and wrong. You have to be accepting of what the audience is bringing in. The most important thing. So in those situations, bring those enemies closer. The things, I know you must be thinking about dinner or getting home to the kids. I know you must be thinking about that important call at 3, and try to build your speech around those things and calcify them. When an oyster gets a grain of sand in it, it doesn't kick the sand out. It makes it into a pearl. And that's what we want to do with those attention irritants and attention things happening in the audience. Any audience you speak to is mostly going to be on their phone most of the time. You can mention that, but don't be insulting. We're all kind of connected to the mobile phone these days, and they might even be looking up things you're saying or taking notes about your speech. You can't judge them for doing that. That's a part of life now. Would you think if someone brought out a pad and started writing it down that they're like writing down notes about what you're saying? That's what you would think automatically. But they could just be drawing pictures or writing a grocery list. You don't know. There's nothing wrong with the technology. It's our approach to the technology and our assumptions about what they're doing with it. So that's my short video about audience. More to come about audience as the spring term rolls along. You can ask me questions here in the comments, but leave a comment and make sure you like or subscribe the video if you found it valuable, and look around the channel. There's lots more public speaking videos just like this one to help you become an excellent orator. Most of these videos, of course, as you know, if you've been around here, are made for my online public speaking class, but publishing them this way, it seems like it gives people the easiest access to watch them on all kinds of devices and content. So if you're not enrolled in one of my university courses, that's great. You're getting university content for free. Well, I mean, you have to watch some ads, but I mean, we're always watching ads, I guess. We can talk about that later. We're always an audience. Hat tip to Jim Crosswhite, who made that observation in his book, Rhetoric of Reason. We are always being audienced. It's a verb. We're always being turned into an audience by everything, including you right now, looking at this on YouTube. So, audience, the most important conception to speech. Hope you've given it some thought, and please leave me a comment or a question. Happy to engage with you here on the channel.